when Michael asked me late last year to come and talk to you guys, my initial reaction was no. So I said yes, because I always think it's good to face your fears and do something that's quite out of the ordinary for someone like myself, who is always behind the camera and making stories on other people. I'm never up here talking, so please bear with me if I'm rambling or if I'm stuttering a little bit. But this is a good little size crowd. Language is a really important thing for humans in a lot of different ways, but one of the things that I really want to touch on today and talk about is two questions essentially, because I assume that most of us are content makers in some sort. We're all designers or art people producing content. Even people out in the streets who have got a Facebook account or a Twitter account or Instagram account, we're always producing content, and we're also producing stories with what we put online. So the two questions I want to talk about today is, how does a content maker or someone like ourselves find stories? And then as consumers, how do we consume or digest those stories? And are those two questions closely linked together? The way that we find stories and the way that we consume them. And I suppose if you think of something, I'm not talking about cat videos as well, cat playing the piano videos, they have their place. I wish I could watch one right now actually. But I'm talking more about the deeper level stuff, something that you connect with. And I suppose if you want to think about it, if you look at something beautiful or you see something that's touching your heart, do you think that it's beautiful or do you feel that it's beautiful? And that's the third language that I want to talk about. We live in a visual world where we create things with our eyes, with our hands, with our ears, we touch. But what about the other element of emotion and feelings? And that's what I want to talk about today. This might not work, but I'll give it a go. If you guys, I want to get you guys nervous as well. If you guys can just stand up for a brief moment and just look at the person next to you. I don't want you to talk to the person, but I just want you to look at that person just for a brief moment. And as you look at that person, I'll look at you, how's that? Just look at that person and what vibe are you getting? What feeling and emotion are you giving? And more importantly, what stories are you showing to that person that you're looking at without talking? Okay, that's it. Well done, thank you. It's a little bit awkward, I know. But we meet people on the street and it's it's human nature to judge and assume. We often see just tips of the icebergs of people. No doubt you're judging me, and that's all cool. I'm judging you guys too. But it's human nature to judge, and so we see people and we put people in boxes and we think, oh, they're that type of person, or they vote for that kind of people, and we assume and we judge all the time. But there's a danger in that, and I'm going to give you an example of an experience that I came across a couple of years ago, where I was looking for a story, and the story just fell through. But then another story arose, and it was an amazing, beautiful, emotional story that I wanted to capture from that person, but I wanted to bring that to the audience. And so, as a content maker, how do we, when we come across something that's beautiful and touching, how do we capture that or bottle that up so that we can represent that same emotion we're feeling to the audience? And is there a formula? Is there a blueprint? I don't think there is. But there are some different ways that we can try and tap into that original emotion that we're feeling when we're hearing someone's story or seeing a beautiful sunset, and try and capture that so that we can honour the audience with that story. So, as I said before, we look and listen with our eyes and our ears when we're watching content. If you imagine on a Sunday rainy afternoon, you might be hangover and you're flicking through the TV channel, and what are you searching for? What's going to make you stop on that certain TV station? Is it something that you're looking at? Probably. Is it something that you're hearing? Absolutely. But what about something that you're feeling? Something that you're emotionally engaged with? Same with tuning in a radio station. What's something that's going to catch your attention? Online, we get bombarded all the time by pieces of information on our Facebook feed, on Twitter. But what's the one piece of content, we've all experienced it, I'm sure, where we're just absolutely caught up in this video or this photo with the story behind it, and our real world around us sort of dims down for a moment and we're caught into another world. And it's just a computer screen, yet we're engaged emotionally through that story. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to show you a photo of a man. Can you all see that photo? what are you feeling right now? What are you thinking about this photo? You have no idea who he is. You don't know where it is. This is what I was presented when I was chasing a story a couple of years ago. I got a lead of a really amazing story and it just fell apart. It wasn't true. It was just a rumour, so the whole story was squashed. But I ended up talking to this guy. This guy's name's Terry. And he was telling me what he was doing with his life. And all of a sudden I became interested and intrigued with his story. But before I go on and tell his story, I just want you to think, okay, this is a man on the beach with a surfboard. Whoopie-doo. But what if I told you now that he attempted suicide because his wife left him? He had a 5-bedroom house, a car, a boat, a 3-sum salary, and it all fell apart. He attempted to end it all, but luckily enough his next door neighbour saw the fumes coming out of the garage, saved his life, and then that very same year he was in a position where he actually saved 2 young kids from drowning and from suffocating. So he ended up saving 2 people's lives. So now you look at that photograph and now what do you feel? Because you know the story, you're emotionally engaged, you're just not thinking, you're feeling. And hopefully we have some time later and I can present Terry's story to you. So as content makers, we want to honour the audience by honouring the story, I believe. Stories that hook people in. But that's very, very hard because we're in a competition, particularly the media industry. I work at the ABC and I know there's a massive amount of competition out there for who's got the best story. And that's asked every single day, every single minute. Who's got the best story right now? And it's really nice being on top of the pile. I've been on top of the pile a couple of times with some of my stories and then 10:30 comes along in the morning and it's something else. It's very, very short-lived because we're living in such a fast-paced world and we judge content like we judge people on the streets by the data and the stats. So for example, if we come across 2 videos on YouTube or Facebook and they might be similar time length, might be even similar in story theme, which one are we going to click on first? We're going to click on the one that has the more hits and the more shares and the more likes. Because more people are watching it, of course we're going to watch it. But does that make the other story less relevant and less touching? Sometimes, but sometimes not. So just like people on the streets, there's thousands of pieces of content out there online right now that are really amazing and really interesting to watch, but because they don't have the social currency or the data to back them up, they're just lost in the sea of information and data. So I suppose there's a correspondence there between the people we meet and then we assume and then we judge, and it's the same thing with content online. We look at a video and we think, oh, it's only been 500 people that have watched it compared to this video that's got 5 million. That video is not worth anything. But we shouldn't judge and assume stuff like that, just like we shouldn't judge and assume people that we meet. Making stories is not necessarily a formula. You know, someone can't say to me, okay, Chris, I want you to find a story between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday. It just doesn't work for me. I think stories need to be organic, they need to be able to breathe. And I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to do it anyway. If I get in trouble, so be it. Every now and then, probably about once a month, I like to do it once a month, sometimes it's once every couple of months, I tell my boss or my office colleagues, I'm going to hit the road, catch you later. And I don't tell them this, but I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going, I'm following my nose. And I've done this probably about 7 times in the last couple of years, and every single time I come back with a piece of gold. I don't know how, but I suppose it's also a challenge on myself that I need to go and I need to come back with something that's really solid and something that's really watchable. A recent example of this was late last year when I went to Mount Magnet, which is about 300 kilometres away from Geraldton East. I don't know why I went there, but I just thought I need to go there. I haven't been there for a while. I walked into the tourist bureau, asked what was happening, went to the local pub. Long story short, I managed to find a really interesting person. They call her the African Queen of Mount Magnet. She's from Zimbabwe. She's been living there for the last 25 years, and people refer to her as the African Queen. And she's quite philosophical. She's always very helpful with the community, and she had a really good yarn. I managed to capture that story of hers and brought it back, and it just went all over ABC as a station networkly. So I didn't tell my colleagues or my boss how I got that story, but it doesn't matter because the story's there. And so I suppose it's just, you're listening to someone and you're hearing someone talk, but it's also about being emotionally engaged with that person, because by honouring that person, you're honouring your audiences. And so there's 2 correspondence there where if you're not honouring your person that you're talking to, then you're not honouring the audiences. That's my opinion. And I'm not talking about news or journalism here. I'm talking about human interest stuff that touches from the heart, which is what I really like doing. Does that all make sense? It's also, has anyone heard of the doorknob theory? This is really interesting. I've only just recently heard of it, and it happens to me all the time. And now I know why it's called the doorknob theory. The theory is that when someone goes to a doctor, something's wrong with you, and you don't want to give everything away. The doctor's trying to diagnose you, what's going on here, and he's trying his best to diagnose you. And then you get up out of the chair and you go to the door, and when you put your hand on the doorknob, that's when you start being honest and say, oh, actually, I've been eating too much Hungry Jacks, or I've been smoking too much. And that's when you've been honest. And it's called the doorknob theory. And it's amazing how often that happens when you're talking to someone and you're building trust, you're building rapport, and then you're packing up. So Terry, this is another example. I was capturing Terry's story, and his lifestyle is pretty interesting. He's a caretaker at a small caravan park. And the interview was done, and I thought, oh, it's an all right story. I was packing up my gear, literally packing up my gear, ready to go, and he did the doorknob theory. That's when he started telling me about how he tried to commit suicide. And that's when I thought, wow, Terry, can I please capture this story? And he said, yes, that's fine, I can share that with you. So what was that? I mean, if I was in a rush and I had to get back because I wanted to finish work at 5, maybe I wanted to capture that element to the story that would make it literally gold. So it's a matter of taking the time, letting it breathe, and letting it be organic. Good stories don't have time parameters. So I ended up being there for 5 hours and getting really good shots through golden hour of the sunset as well. And so, for me, time does not matter. It doesn't matter if I have to do 10 hours of overtime unpaid a week just to get a really good story, because to me, getting the essence of the story is really important, because that's going to benefit the audiences. So learning the language of storytelling, not just using your senses, but emotionally engaging people. That's the essence of what I'm talking about. Tapping into their emotion and trying to capture that into the story of your story that you're presenting, so that audiences all over can feel it, not just see it and listen to it. Because I suppose at the end of the day, stories, there's my world and then there's your world, and then sometimes through stories, those worlds clash. And that's brilliant. That's what it's all about. It's those little ordinary moments in life and perhaps in people that we see that not just looked upon through sight and through listening, but actually emotionally engaged. That's when those little ordinary moments become extraordinary. That's about it, really. Sure, I suppose it's a lot of trial and error. I suppose I'll watch a lot of content. I'll watch a lot of movies. That's pretty much how I was educated, was through Hollywood, basically. I've only done a little bit of tertiary education through film and media. But I suppose, music is a big play in building up the emotion, and I suppose the pregnant pauses and time for the viewer to digest what's being said as well. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it's really hard to try and portray that message, but I suppose it comes back down to what I was saying before, of trying to honour the person and their story so that we can honour the audiences. Yeah. Has anyone got anything to say or any questions?
So beautifully shot.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
How much probing did you have to do of him to get some of those responses, or did you just let him speak for half an hour?
Yeah, the interview probably went on for about 40 minutes, the first one. And then, as I said, I was packing up. Then he started telling me more about his, the other part of his story, and then that probably went on for about another 15, 20. So all up, it was close to probably, 50 minutes or up. And so choosing the bits down to a 4-minute film can be quite tricky. But those 2 stories of the girls that he saved, he actually went on quite a bit in the details. So I didn't think I needed to do that with the audiences, because time's a real big factor, as you know. Stats show that 30-second video is a real killer for Facebook. Anything over that, you're going to be really struggling. So it's really important to try and bottle the message up as clearly as possible so that audiences can consume it, but without losing the effect and dishonouring the person and their story. But But yeah, it took a little while. Like I said, I was there with him for about 4 or 5 hours or up. And I think, getting cutaways of him, reading the book and that kind of stuff. And I was chatting to him behind the scenes as well. So that was sort of making him feel comfortable as well. Because yeah, before that day, we were just strangers. So it's a matter of just trying to convince them through emotional language as well as verbal language that, hey, I'm on your side. I want to do you a service by honouring your story, not take advantage of you. Yeah.
I guess that was going to lead into my query about how to make someone feel comfortable while you're trying to film someone, because obviously it doesn't come naturally to most people. I guess it's kind of quite isolated out there in regards to technology and something you're kind of trying to interview him, but not intimidate him with the camera.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I mean, we use cameras like the one that's at the back there now. So, they're Canon 7Ds or 50Ds, so they're not so intrusive as the big, big cameras that you see on the news. So that helps as well. But yeah, like you said, it's just a matter of trying to get on their level to say, okay, well, how would I feel if someone was coming to me and wanted to share my story? How would I want to be treated? And it's as simple as that, really. It's it's trying to get down on their level and just reassure them that everything's going to be okay. I live there. I live in Geraldton, and the last thing I want to do is make a story on someone like Terry and twist into something that it's not. I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if I do that. Yeah.
Could you make a story out of anybody? I mean, everybody has a story.
Absolutely.
So you could pretty much walk up to someone at random and if you establish that rapport, you would get a good story out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people will take longer than others, obviously, because other people are introverts and more guarded for whatever reason, and that itself is a story as well. But yeah, absolutely. I remember going to Yalgoo once, and I went to the local pubs. Are great for finding stories. They really are. And I walked in there, and there was hardly anyone there. I think there was only 3 blokes in there. One guy, he was a big burly bloke, and he looked intimidating. He really did. And I thought, you know what, bugger, I'm going to go up there anyway and have a drink with him. And then having a chat with him, and he actually was a big teddy bear at the end of it. And it comes back down to the icebergs. We see something and we think, that's that kind of person, we won't go there. But that's, we miss out on opportunities if we judge people like that. And like me saying yes to Michael, facing my fears, going up to someone can be quite fearful. And so, yeah, it's a matter of trying to challenging yourself. And if they say, no, I don't want anything to do with you, I don't want to talk about my story, what have you got nothing to lose, you haven't lost anything. But yeah, I remember him telling me about gold mining out in the outback, and some of the yarns he was telling me was really quite interesting. Yeah.
Have you ever worked with children?
Not to this level. I mean, I do workshops with. I don't do it as much anymore. Nah, they're a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah, and I quite often, if I do that with kids, I always try and have their guardians or their parents there, just so that for more than making sure that they feel comfortable, and also that their parents are aware of what's happening as well. But yeah, kids are really unique on their own, aren't they? Yeah.
As an employer, I'm not sure what ABC is like, but in terms of how you're talking about your process and what works really well for you and enables you to get the goal, is there any tension there with the employer who's kind of saying, well, I'm really happy that you're organic, but we kind of need to wrap this up now?
Absolutely, yeah. No, deadlines are really good and they're really important. I have a regular Monday morning segment with breakfast, so I present a story that I'm working on for that Monday morning. So deadlines are really important, absolutely. But I suppose I've got a reputation now within my office and with my boss in Geraldton. He knows that when I go out, I'm going to come back with something. So, and I suppose that's good for me too, because I've had confidence in myself now. And the day that I don't come back with something, maybe that's maybe it's time to do something different, or maybe it's it's just one of those things that you can't come back every time. It's like fishing; you can't come back every time with a big trout. But that doesn't work for everyone. I know that, but
if your focus is on like you really got to get the story, then you maybe won't come back with it all because you're not focusing on like your thoughts are totally shifted.
Yeah.
So you going out, like I really respect that whole. I'm just going out, and I don't know where I'm going.
I suppose when I first started ABC, it was told to me that we pay you for 38 hours a week. Anything you do over that, you're volunteering, and I'm cool with that. Sometimes I might get a day off. Like today, I've got a day off because I worked last weekend, so that's worked out well. But like I was saying before, for me, it's really important to get that gold and visually as well. So with Terry, for example, you know, I was there till 6:30, 7 o'clock at night because it's sunset hour, it's beautiful, beautiful light. And so I don't care if I'm not getting paid for it because I just want the story to be the best that it can. So I'm happy to volunteer my time so that the story can be just a little bit better. Yeah.
You talked a bit about honouring the story and by honouring the audience. So would you feel differently about the stories that you create if nobody watched them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. And you know, it's funny because you know I produce stories and I put them online and I think that's it. That this is going to go off. It's going to go on the national page and it just goes nowhere. And then other stories I think, oh, this is okay, and then it goes off. You know, and someone in Sydney picks it up and I'm like, well, how does it? So it's really weird how it all works. But yeah, absolutely. You know, of course, I'm like everyone else. I'm not a robot. If people love my video and they share it and they like it, I get a buzz out of that. And then, you know, the other way around, if no one likes it and I think, okay, I'll learn from that. I'll learn, okay, they didn't connect to that story. Why is that? And I might even ask some people, you know, did you watch my video? What did you think? And so I can get a gauge of what works. Because what I find emotional, you know, connection to, you guys might not find that. But I try and sort of, you know, just trying to get that broad audience to feel the same way that you can. And sometimes you do it, sometimes you can't. Yeah. But I think, you know, when it comes down to if 2 people watch it or 200 people watch it, it's a matter of does the person who I made the story on like it and you know, are they going to be happy to share it with their family and their friends? And if they're not, then I think that's a problem. Yeah.
Do you show it to them before you?
Sometimes, yeah. Some of them really want to, and some people I know that are quite. So I think with Terry, for example, I wanted to show him before I showed anyone else because that's a pretty personal story that he's just released to the whole world now, and actually put him on the map. So a lot of people know Terry, but they didn't know his story of what happened. And so now when they see him at because everyone goes up to Coronation Beach for windsurfing and so forth and camping, and they know Terry. So now after seeing the video, which everyone has seen, they know who he is, and now they can sort of emotionally connect to him because they know of his story. So I was conscious of that, so I wanted to show him before I played it to anyone else, and he was fine with that. So that made me feel better too. Because it's a vulnerable thing. When you're being vulnerable with someone who's going to show the whole world your vulnerability, that's a big thing. I don't know if I would want that. Would you guys want that? So that, again, it comes down to trust and saying, okay, I trust this guy. And that's a big responsibility for me as a content maker that I got his story in my hands. I need to be careful of how I present that to the world.
I'm smiling because Chris has agreed to do the edit for this video.
It's hilarious, eh?
What's in your little book?
Oh, this is just my little hooks for my little talk.
Did you make that book yourself?
No, I got given it. I can't remember who gave it to me. It's been sitting around for a while and I thought, perfect, I'll use it. Pretty hipster.
It was very mysterious.
Okay, cool. So you've given us lots of, I would say, advice on how to deal with people.
Mhm.
With modern, if that's the right word for it.
Yep.
Do you want to switch now and give us any technical advice on videos? That's something people are interested in. I don't know.
Does anyone produce video content?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
what I do for a job. but-
Yeah, okay.
Maybe
What
another
you-
question is like, does anyone want to be interested in video? Because like, you know, I don't want this to be my problem.
What would you like to know, Michael?
Yeah. So, yeah, do you learn any technical details or anything like that from Chris? Or
How much do you plan out the edit? How much, you know, because I've edited stuff before and usually it's footage that other people have shot and it's an absolute nightmare. So how much when you're filming are you thinking around that final edit? Do you shape or do you just kind of let that happen and then spend an inordinate amount of time?
Yeah, that's a really good question actually because you know I personally think there's no rules when it comes to filmmaking. Some people and even some of my colleagues will strongly argue against that, but they've been tertiary trained. I haven't, So, and I'm not putting that down by any means, but I think there's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to making films. And so some people find it a lot easier to script everything, to storyboard it. I don't like doing that. I mean, sometimes you have to to a certain degree, but for me, I like to keep it organic, and that's even come down to the editing as well. I like to edit through my heart, really. That's the essence of it. I always find a song first that I think is going to suit the story, and then I cut to that song. So music's really important. But yeah, I'm at the stage now where I've been doing it for about 15 years now, making films, and I'm at the stage now that when I film a story, I'm editing in my mind already, and that takes a lot of time to get there. Yeah, so it's just a matter of finding a story and then trying to work out how it's going to look at the finished product, so working backwards essentially, and then trying to get the shots that you need to get to the end result. That's how I usually work. But some people work completely different. They know what the story is, so they write a shot list of what they need, all the different cutaways, what interview questions they're going to ask, and that's great. If it works for them, that's great. I don't work that way. Yeah.
Why did you choose to have him looking directly into the camera as opposed to a traditional interview style looking past the camera?
Yeah, people ask me about that actually. I think because I was standing right next to the camera was here, and I was actually standing right here, so he was actually looking at me, but you can't tell that in the shot. I suppose, I don't know if I did it intentionally or not, to be honest. I don't know. But to me, I actually quite like it because it's almost like he's sharing his story with us directly. So, and yeah, you're right, some stories aren't as, I suppose, touching or that vulnerability there. So it is nice to have that sort of traditional cutaway, and I do that quite often. But yeah, sometimes I just think it's nice to have them looking straight into the camera, even though they're not. I'm just sitting right next to the camera and they're looking at me, if that makes sense. I always tell them don't look at the camera, they always look at me, have eye contact with me, because A, that makes me feel comfortable, and you know, me looking at the camera right now makes me nervous. So that's really important too, yeah.
I'm curious, like, just on that, like, when you're explicit with people and when you're not explicit, like, what do you reveal and what do you like, okay, I'm just going to go with the flow here?
As in the interview?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
So I suppose with Terry, I had a fair idea of what his story was. I thought, at the beginning, I thought I was just capturing his lifestyle. I thought he had a pretty unique lifestyle, living in a caravan park, caretaking this community camping ground, and living a pretty cool lifestyle, I thought. So I was just capturing that. I didn't realise that it was going to lead to something else that was going to be a little bit more deeper. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, you were like, there was a point where you said, Terry, can I film this?
Yes.
You know, when you're packing up.
Yes.
So that to me has been very explicit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I basically said to him...
Was that the moment you were explicit and the rest was just...
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I was pretty direct. I said, I had a pretty good relationship by then, obviously, because he opened up. And I didn't interrupt him telling me his story when the camera was off and I was packing up. I let him finish because I wanted to hear it. And then I think there was probably a few minutes where I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then I said, Terry, do you mind if I record this? Because this is going to change the story dynamically. And I do remember him having a pregnant pause as if, do I really want this out in the world? I remember him doing that look. And he said, yeah, no worries, let's do it. And that's when we did it. So, and if he said, no, I don't want that, and that happens all the time. People tell me stuff off the record, amazing stories that add to their, to the storyline, and they won't share it publicly. And that's fine. You've got to respect that because this is their lives that we're dealing with here. I'm not a journalist that's going to go in there ruthlessly and try and get the nitty. No way, I'm not doing that. I'm doing a human interest, and as I said before, respect the person, regardless of whether they're going to spill the whole beans or just a little bit of it. I live there. I don't want to lose any sleep over because I've wrecked someone's lives. Yeah.
Do you approach people with your camera? I mean, do you come to them?
No, never. Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah. I mean, because
if you've set that up ahead of time, but otherwise you just don't.
Yeah. So with Terry, I was like, I just had my hands in my pocket and just chatting to him on the beach for about an hour. I was actually looking for another story, and I was talking to him about the other story, and he basically confirmed to me that story was made up and was bullshit. And so that's when I went, oh, damn, that was a really good story. It was actually about MH370 a wing washing up on the beach along there. Someone told me about it. And I thought he would know because he lives there. And he said, no, I've heard that. It's a lot of crap. So I'm like, ah. So I was just chatting to him, and I thinking, oh, what am I going to do now? And then he started telling me his story, and then I said, can I film you? Can I do it? And interestingly, he didn't do it that day. He didn't do it that day. I didn't want to do it that day because I didn't feel like I was ready to film it that day. So I said, can I come out next Monday, a week later from now, and can I film it? And he's like, yeah, sure, no worries. So that was planned. That was planned. But the initial first point of contact, I had no cameras with me. And it was in the car, but I wasn't talking to him with any of my gear in my hands, yeah.
So you said that you spent like 5 hours or something. Like how long do you spend on editing that story?
Probably close to the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5-6 hours. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so good hearing the story behind the story. Like quite often, as an audience member, whether you're watching online or wherever it is, you see it, that's cool, you really engage with it and feel it. But then now you're picking layers out of this, and there's just layer upon layer upon layer of goodness.
Okay.
So the story behind the story is a story.
Yeah, okay.
And
Yep.
then there's, well, we keep talking, what else are we going to be hearing?
Okay, that's interesting because I don't often talk about the story behind the story with anyone, so it's interesting that you say that. Yeah.
It just, I don't know, for me, like as I design, I'm feeling, I'm like massive into the story making and the,
Yep.
having some creative meaning behind it, and that I'm finding it fascinating. That whole, I was just talking to him about the MH370 and that shit, and then we suddenly got this other story, and then it's just, it actually just creates some good meaning in a world that's just so full of chaos at the moment.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I have to say that's one of the things I enjoy living out in the country, is that you're still there, of course, but it's not so magnified, I feel. Yeah.
Last question from someone else, but I'm going to ask one first. So I'm not the last. You also do films which are clearly, well, they seem to be just you. You're not interacting with other people. You're like in nature, or you set up particular shots. So
Yep.
I'm just sort of curious about that process. What does that do for you, like personally as an artist or creator?
Yeah. I started doing time lapses probably about 12 years ago now. Everyone knows what time lapse is now, but back 12 years ago, I felt like it was kind of fresh and new, so I was really into it, and I taught myself. And the best way of doing that is going to landscapes and just sitting there. And it was almost like meditating, because time lapses can take anywhere between an hour to 6 hours, depending on what you're time lapsing. And so you're literally out in the bush or in the surrounding, and you have to sit there with the camera. You can't just leave it. And I really felt that was really, really nice. And I suppose you start connecting to the landscape differently. And so I do a lot of nature videos with just music and sound effects and just nature, no storyline at all. And I just find that therapeutic. And I put it up online and think, someone might like it, someone might not. And I quite often make it downloadable in Creative Commons so people can use it for whatever they want. And I'm talking about my personal work now, nothing to do with ABC. And it's amazing how every now and then you just get a little comment or a little bit of feedback saying, oh, I love that nature video, or I love that. Because people obviously feel the same way to me, where they, it's a little gateway, a little window to, nature. You guys must feel it all the time, to feel the earth beneath your feet. It's really important. Yeah.
Where can we find your stuff?
ABC, if you just type in Chris Lewis ABC Open, there'll be a whole bunch of stuff there that I've done with ABC Open. And my alias on Vimeo for my personal page is Underwater Guy, because I like to do water videos as well and photography. Yeah, and that's UNDA Water Guy. UNDER was taken. So. Thank you.